Welcome back to Our Community. Susie Thomas visiting with Stephanie Liberatore and Patricia Hoffman, talking about the new book, Unbound. And when we're talking about Unbound, we're talking about women and a sexual past. You are brave enough to, in this book, share from your own story. How much of your story would you like to share with us this morning?
How much time do you have?
Exactly 13 minutes.
Let me just say that 96% of the population out there have a sexual past before marriage. So I'm really not any different than anybody else. We've walked a lot of the same paths. I have to say that, that we've all heard that cliche, looking for love in all the wrong places.
Yeah.
That was definitely part of my story, wanting the approval of men, needing the attention, seeking their love, core things that every heart longs for. I was looking, but I was looking wrong, in the wrong places. Found myself pregnant as a senior in high school. Ended that pregnancy in abortion. And I feel like I kind of flatlined emotionally. Kind of a Walking Dead. That's the only picture that comes into my mind, but still looking for that love. We didn't talk about it with anybody, didn't have anybody to unpack that pain. It really did a number on me.
Well, I'm going to guess, would you mind telling us about what year you would have been a senior in high school?
1985.
Okay, and I'm going to guess that about that time, had you decided to carry that pregnancy, the high school would not have let you finish. Am I correct? You would have had to maybe drop out, get a GRE or some other way, but would not have been able to walk in the line at graduation. But you would have been more encouraged to take the route you take and then go on with your life as if nothing has happened.
It's a good point. I don't even know if that was on my radar at the time. I just found myself in an unplanned pregnancy. But suffice to say, God had his hand in everything in my life, and ended up 7 years later, coming to Christ, really turning my life around and giving him my heart, my life, all of that. And then it was 17 years later down the road that I received healing from that abortion wound. He had to take me clear across the other side of the world. I was in Russia when I felt like that big scab was picked open and I'm bleeding and a lot of grief. And then when I came stateside, I connected with Pregnancy Support Center at the time. Now it's Pregnancy Choices. Worked through that healing. And that had to be the first thing that he did for
Take
me.
us back to Russia, 17 years where you continued to carry that, even knowing you're forgiven. Hardest to forgive ourselves, isn't it?
True.
But what happened in Russia that suddenly it clicked, it took?
Well, I have to say, Susie, it was a book in my hand. My good friend at the time was the client services director at the pregnancy center. And I knew that I was going to Russia. They happened to have a pregnancy center ministry at the base I was going to in St. Petersburg. And she said to me, why don't you take this post-abortion study with you? I knew that Russia had a very high abortion rate. And I felt like, okay, a book in the hand to give to somebody that could heal, help women across the world.
So your thought was, I'm going to help these women in Russia.
Sure.
Yes.
Or I'm going to at least give them a tool that could help them. I thought I was okay, Susie. I had Christ. It was all under the blood, right?
Yes, exactly. And true.
It is true, but there's a difference between forgiveness and healing, I told you.
Wow. That's good.
So long flight, I'm on the plane, I get the book out of my carry-on, and I start to look at it, and then I slam it shut. Where's the parachute? I can't jump.
Kind of stuck in a plane.
I'm kind of stuck, but it turned out to be the most glorious grieving that I ever experienced in my life, and it needed to happen. He promised me, I'll just share this one part. my grief was so intense that I refused to eat at one point. And because I thought, Lord, you've got to do something, because I can't even. I was going to class, doing my thing. I was hurting so deeply inside. And I went to class, came back, was doing my Bible reading, and I happened to be in Nehemiah chapter 8. And it was verse 10 that set me free. He says, eat. Today, I don't want you fasting. I want you, eat, because the joy of the Lord is your strength. And I took that to say, Stephanie, I have been waiting a long time for this.
Yeah.
I'm celebrating that you're awake. You're not asleep anymore. So that was huge in my life. I don't know why he needed to send me clear across the other side of the world. But remember, I was emotionally numb. So I think it's interesting that he takes me to the Arctic cold, because it was wintertime, to the Arctic cold to thaw me out emotionally.
Oh my goodness, what an analogy. But also how nice, very practical, our God, that he would put you on a really long flight. And also that we never learn anything more than when we're teaching it to other people. So the fact that you were going to be leading this with these other gals, you're learning it at another level at the same time. Do you agree?
Well, I would agree with that. I wasn't leading anything. I was there doing a discipleship training school. I was just a messenger with a book, going to pass it to a base leader.
You thought.
I thought.
Yeah. Oh, my goodness. Okay. We were speaking with Stephanie Liberatore and Patricia Hoffman about the new book, Unbound. Who is this for?
It's for people like me and you. It's for a woman who feels stuck, who's haunted by the ghosts of her past, who want desperately to maybe delete the chapters that she doesn't like or that wished had never happened. But we can't do that, can we? But we can be at peace with our past. And so it's for that one who thinks that she can't be forgiven, who wants to let go of the past, who's just dragging baggage along.
It sounds almost too good to be true. I'm sure there's someone listening and they're saying, this sounds great, and then you were okay and everything's fine, but this is my reality. What would you say to that one person?
It is a reality. God so desperately wants to free his girls and his guys. He came to set the captives free. I mean, I sit with a lot of women who think the same thing, like, oh, yeah, but you don't know my story. But when we surrender our story, when we give it to him, he will bring healing, because that's what he wants. He's a good, good father.
People wanting to be a part of your groups, to be able to get the benefit of not just the book, but a session and going through this. There might be some hesitancy, though, to share from their own. At what point do you need to get before you take the step to be brave enough to read this book and be brave enough to sit in one of your sessions?
I think it just comes with saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm sick and tired of my junk and just wanting that change. A lot of women are afraid to share their story, but just taking that step of faith and trusting the process, shackles fall.
Wow.
One thing I will say about our groups is, from the get-go, as leaders, we share our stories. And that really creates a vulnerability within the group, because we've laid our hearts bare before. And we do find that it gives the women then courage to say, you know what, I think I can do this as well.
Yes. And disclosing tends to encourage disclosing. But something, I'm going to take you all the way back to the beginning. Women do need to feel love. They need to feel a connection. They need that in their lives. So what are they to do in order to satisfy that very basic need, to feel loved, to feel cherished? is there some kind of a replacement for that? Or what would be the next step in healing? Like, okay, I understand I can be healed from the past, but what about my future? Does that hold love for me? What would you say to that person?
Are you talking about a single woman or a married woman?
Let's take them one at a time. The single woman, then the married woman. Married women can also feel very isolated and very unloved and very uncherished at times.
Well, here I am. I'm trying to separate the two. They really aren't separated because Christ is the one who wants to be our all in all. Mm-hmm. And that's what I had to find. That he's, whether or not, there is not a man on earth that can give me what I need. Exactly. Or any woman. Mm-hmm. There's not a friendship. There's nothing that can take his place. That's what every heart needs to come to, that he can satisfy that emptiness and fill it with him.
Mm-hmm. And fill it enough. I know I had a friend who was a comedian, and she said, but you can't hug a spirit. So, can you address that? What is one to do as far as being able to actually feel that complete feeling of being loved and cherished when there's not a physical person standing in front of you?
Well, I think as well that when we're functioning from a place of woundedness, that we tend to keep people at arm's length. Mm-hmm. So I find as well that when you enter into that healing process and the Lord begins to restore your heart, that he as well brings, like Steph said, I agree that he ultimately is the only one that can fill that void. Mm-hmm. But yet he does bring people into our lives, and we begin to allow ourselves to be transparent with other people, to be willing to trust one another. And in that, he's able, even though we can't physically see him, he gives us people that are able to love on us, that are able to, fill our hearts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And a true feeling of feeling full, completely full of love. It's tough, isn't it, on a marriage when a woman enters it with this same baggage? Because sometimes you go into a marriage with this kind of a past. You think marriage is going to be a reset, but not always. And I'm sure you've spoken with women and worked with women who've had to work through that. Can you touch on that?
Yes. Marriage isn't going to satisfy.
Fix everything.
It's not. It's not. Mm-hmm. But marriage is meant to be this incredible picture of intimacy that we share with Christ. And that's, we try to fill that need for love and affection and intimacy in a sexual way, but it's not it. That's like such a small slice. There's emotional intimacy mm-hmm. that we share with friends and so forth, but ultimately marriage is this picture of this holy, crazy love relationship that he wants to have with us.
Yeah. It's almost like an analogy that we live out from day to day, isn't it?
It is.
The book is Unbound, written by Stephanie Liberatore and edited and proofread by Patricia Hoffman. And Stephanie, tell us how we can get the book.
A couple of different ways. Amazon.com, Barnes & Nobles, but you can also pick it up at Pregnancy Choices. Stop by our office, give us a call, 330-455-7500.
Perfect. Authors Stephanie Liberatore and Patricia Hoffman, thank you so much. The book is Unbound. Be sure to pick that up. And thanks for joining us on Our Community.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you.